Good evening. Welcome to the 2021 Young Alumni Summer Series, UAB and Beyond. My name is Christy Peters, and I am the Alumni Affairs Specialist for UAB School of Engineering. Thank you for joining us this evening. First, we'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items. If you are not muted, please do so now. At any time during the presentation, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenter. If you can put those in the chat. And then I will be monitoring the chat as we go along. I can ask those questions of Gabriel, but also at the end of his presentation, feel free to raise your hand or unmute to ask him any questions. As time allows, he will try and answer all the questions that you have during the Q&A session at the end of his presentation. As I said, we will be recording this, so if you have to leave us and are unable to stay the whole time, that will be available later. And now I'd like to briefly introduce you to our speaker and let him introduce himself afterwards. We have Mr. Gabriel Okafor. He is a 2018 alumnus of UAB School of Engineering. He's originally from, and Gabriel, forgive me if I mispronounce it, Anambra, Nigeria, where he obtained an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering and thereafter took the challenge up a notch by coming to UAB for a graduate degree in the same. While at UAB, he was able to publish 2 research papers on sustainable and distributed energy alternatives to grid power. Gabriel is currently a design engineer advancing his career at Hubble Power Systems, a company operating in the power and communications industry, and looks forward to sharing his experiences with you tonight. All right, Gabriel, take it away.
Thank you, Kirsten. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Gabriel here, like she said. I'm looking forward to making an impact, teaching things or exposing things that would be very helpful for students and people that are trying to build their careers moving forward. It's been quite the ride for me, like Christina said in the introduction, coming from Nigeria and doing a study abroad program, moving here, there was a lot of unknowns, but a lot of people asked me along the way, why UAB of all places, for very many reasons, but for a lot of other good reasons, I come back telling them that it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made. And I'm happy that I'm in a position to be able to speak about UAB like that and the School of Engineering as a whole. So yeah, it's been an honor. It's been a privilege. I've enjoyed it, the ride, and I will. I do hope that you all enjoy your own rides. It's always different for different people, but at the end of the day, there is an opportunity to make it what you want it to be, and that's what we're here for. I'm gonna quickly share my screen because I have a few. I promise there's barely any text, but just to keep us engaged. Let me know when you can think it's up, right? Yes, okay, awesome. All right, so yeah, we're here to talk about designing our careers. We already went through the introduction, and hold on, give me 1 second. Yes, let's just go. Yeah, so 3 very basic steps: dream, design, and build. I didn't want to put this up here as a sort of a catchphrase only, because every single one of them has a deeper meaning, and really it transcends just our careers. It goes into just regular life as well. So I definitely don't want anyone taking this as, the DDB or something like that. Really, I would prefer, we listen and get, understand the concept as to where I'm coming from. But it's very powerful dreaming. Talking about the very first one there, it's very powerful having a mental picture of what you want your career to be, and you talk about it, you manifest it, and those thoughts can go a long way. But at the same time, you do need to back those with action, right? And that's where the design and the build comes into play, because you cannot just think about it without doing anything. So if you're thinking about your career, you're thinking about what you want to do in the future, how far you want to go, what you want to learn, and enjoying the process as you go through, you do have to keep in mind that just thinking or dreaming about it has to come with the designing and the building. So, actions do have to come together with the thoughts. There's a lot of people that think, but they don't necessarily go ahead and do. Probably why Nike went and used the "just do it" a phrase that's lasted generations, right? But designing and building would need to be part of what we think about generally for our careers. One step at a time, one day at a time, 1 hour, 1 second at a time, being mindful of how we spend our days, or how we prioritize in terms of time management. I think like all that plays a role, and being intentional about it as well does help. It contributes a lot to our greater goals. Yeah, so I have this slide here showing a little bit about how my own path has been. All right, I will say it wasn't necessarily true that at every point in time I knew exactly what I was doing. But what I did have was I had a dream, I had a plan, and I was making very intentional actions in making sure that dream came into reality, right? And these are just, they're mostly job functions. In between, there is extracurriculars, but it was a lot of intentional building, right? There wasn't, it didn't just, and that's why on the left side you see intention versus coincidence, because a lot of times people can confuse, oh, they see that you have all these big dreams, and sometimes people look down on that. But a lot of times, whenever you are consistently working towards those dreams and doing things in line with those things, and if you're in the right place, things do work out, right? That's been my experience, and I hope it'll be yours too. So there is not a lot I would put for, there's not a lot I'll leave up to chance, right? You have to be very intentional. I talked to a lot of people about knowing, first off, taking classes seriously. It's hard to hear. It's not a lot of people want to hear that. Of course, you have to have downtime, right? You gotta be able to enjoy extracurriculars. Learn a different language if you want, or dance, or go to birthday parties or whatnot. But keeping the end goal in sight, and I'll delve a little bit into this, right? I studied mechanical engineering. I knew that I wanted to do that in the future. Whenever I finished undergrad, I went to grad school. I was making sure I was networking with people. So networking is pretty key. So by virtue of y'all being here, that's a good step, right? That's being in a space like this where we can talk and you can relate to people that have kind of been through that phase and can relate to being through that phase does help out a lot. So networking was really key. I was very involved with the career and development office at UAB. I remember when I would go and they would help me with my resumes. It was a 1-pager and then it became a 2-pager, and I landed my first internship. and I didn't really like that one. And then I landed a second internship. But along the way, there were so many other things in between. Um, and I'll make this reference, Ms. Deslin Robinson, you might know her, but she would always talk about transferable skills. And essentially what it was is the job roles that you do today would feed. There will be some skills that that are transferable to whatever job role you do in the future. So it all connects at the end of the day like a mesh, and that's why you see all the arrows from the top all the way to the bottom, because of what I do today. It's very easy to see the trend of how everything I had done before now has taught me something, has led to something else, has been a driving force or motivation to do better in the next phase and the next phase and the next phase after that. So that's also one thing to keep in mind. I will say this. There are situations where some people might not be very sure. You know, they might be going through a phase where they're trying to figure things out. They're trying to understand exactly what they want to get into, exactly what they want to focus on, exactly what their goals should be. And it's very easy to get carried away or get heavily influenced by friends or family, and because we are social beings, we connect in that way, and sometimes it's a little difficult, and that's usually where being able to have a community, a thriving community where you can talk about these things and help and get help from people in terms of figuring things out can really go a long way. So there is no one size fits all, but I'll definitely say that being intentional versus waiting for anything to just click, anything to just work. You really want to focus on being intentional as opposed to it just being happenstance. And that's a big takeaway for me. Yeah, so this slide, I just have four pillars that I believe are super important for a successful career. Health, emotional intelligence, consistency, hard and smart, smart and hard work, hard and smart work, whichever one comes first for you. And then of course you have your career right there in the middle. These were things that I didn't necessarily understand myself until after a while. But taking them one at a time, you got to be healthy, right? You got to be physically healthy. You got to be mentally healthy. So it's important to kind of take care of yourself. A lot of people kind of neglect that. And the truth is, if you sleep 2 hours every night, which some people probably do that right now, but that ultimately would affect your performance, whether even though you don't want it to, but it's just as a result of the way you kind of have, say, shortened your sleep, or maybe you don't, take care of yourself, you don't eat right, or you don't take breaks when you need to, you kind of get overworked. So yeah, taking care of your health can make a phenomenal difference, and I mean both physically and mentally. Smart and hard work, right? It's that I put the smart work there because I'm a millennial, start there. So we do think about smarter ways to do things as opposed to the hardest way to do things. And it doesn't necessarily mean being lazy or maybe cutting corners. No, far from it. But being a strategic in the way you. I'll give an example. You might have there was a competition that we went to, and this was a solo decathlon back in my when I was doing graduate school at UAB. And this was essentially, we had to build a net zero house here in Birmingham, and we had to transport that all the way to Colorado and put it back together. By net zero house, I mean a house that would be able to support itself in terms of power needs without needing to get power from the grid. So it had solar panels all over the roof. It also had really super efficient appliances. And there were times when just by doing things a tad bit differently, we were able to beat our opponents in Colorado. It was a team of about 12. Alabama came fourth, which was really impressive considering the people that we were running up against. But just smart tweaks here and there can make such a huge difference. And the same can apply to whenever you're building a career, or when, say, you are doing an internship or a co-op, or you actually get your first job and you're working full time. Thinking outside the box sometimes can make all the difference, right? As opposed to having a one way of doing it. It's more like being very flexible with how you come up with solutions. Consistency, big deal. A lot of people start something, they get super excited, and in 2 months they're done. But being consistent, going back to the first slide, right? You got to dream, you got to design, and you got to build. And you kind of need to stay consistent throughout. You don't want to quit halfway. You don't want to, unless except you just you get to the point where you feel like you're changing directions to maybe something else. But regardless of what it is, consistency is key. Cannot say that enough. Emotional intelligence. This is something new, especially in the workforce today. So there's a lot of opportunities out there where being technically intelligent gets you in the door, right? It gets you in the door, it gets you started. I mean, you can walk into a room and have no clue what's being talked about, and with just a few clicks on your phone, you can Google a few words, and you start to get the idea. You start to at least be able to have conversations. Now that's technical intelligence, right? But the emotional intelligence that comes with that takes, things like being able to work with multi-generational people, like say working with a traditionalist or working with a Gen Z. That helps you be more of a better team player. You're able to control your temper. You're able to be more professional. You're able to take opportunities that present themselves. So a lot of times from my experience, what sets people apart is becoming more and more the emotional intelligence as opposed to the technical intelligence, because you can find a lot of people who are technically intelligent, but there's not that many that are emotionally intelligent. And so what ends up happening is you have interviews and two people get interviewed, one person seems to knock everything technical out the board, but it just still did not feel right. And they talk to some other person who is maybe kind of average in the tech, just enough to get the job done, but he's able to read the room. He or she is able to understand, body language, social constructs, or those types of things, right? So being able to connect, because at the end of the day, we are human. I mean, a very typical example is job searches. We're talking about careers, right? So at the end of the day, either looking for a job or you're trying to own a company or something of the sort. For a lot of people, they are looking for jobs, but there's a reason why a referral works way better than applying online, right? Because a referral brings the human factor into it. So again, a lot of times being emotionally intelligent can really, really set you apart. And I know I'm being sort of generic here. Feel free to ask more very specific questions to very specific issues, as we get into the Q&A. But I think that what I was trying to do was just give pointers as to things that you do need to be thinking about. And I'll as a recap, you do have to be very intentional, right? And it's okay, again, it's okay to be in a phase where you don't really have a full grasp of what you're gunning for. The most important thing is being able to reach out to people that can help, being able to not kind of like let it fall by the wayside, but be intentional about coming up with some idea as to what your passion is. And a lot of times it does help for it to be bigger than money. Again, something that is hard for a lot of people to hear or accept, but a lot of times when you find out that thing that makes you tick, and you find out what you really want to do. Again, it may have nothing to do with trying to find a job. It might be working at a foundation. It could be, whatever that career is. I'm assuming most of us here are engineers, right? It might be owning a company or starting a construction company or going into tech. A lot of tech is coming into Birmingham lately. It could be, it could be anything. But whatever it is, if you can connect with something deeper, the money usually always just comes with it. It's like a given, it's a no-brainer, right? But sometimes, and I had a conversation with that. I'm digressing, but it's okay. It's relevant to what we're doing. I was talking to someone today who came out of an interview and did not feel like he impressed, did not feel like he was convincing enough. And I was, asking questions, what was it like? What were the questions like? And one of the questions that really got him unsettled was, why do you want to switch jobs? And it was difficult for him to answer. Reason being that he wanted to switch jobs. The real reason was because he didn't quite like his manager, which happens. That's probably most people. But he obviously could not say that at the interview, right? But so he goes on this tangent and talks about a whole lot of other stuff, and he couldn't even convince himself, right? And so all that energy was very obvious in the interview room, because there wasn't anything grounding. And trust me, like for those that have been in interviews, you can see right through that. So usually if you're able to connect with that, you also like set yourself up for success, where people want you around, people want to hire you, people want to keep you, people want to promote you, people want to give you more responsibilities, people want to give you more of everything, because you develop trust. So if you notice throughout this presentation, I have focused a lot on other things apart from academics and the technicalities, because I want to believe that a lot of us are doing well, in that area. But these other things are really what sets you apart. Being able to stick through with it, to have a plan, stick through with it, be intentional about it, staying healthy physically and mentally. And being emotionally intelligent and being able to work with different people, and be open to new ideas and be flexible. These are how great things happen. I mean, Henry Ford said, if you ask people what they would have wanted, they would have told you a faster horse, right? But then he went ahead and created something just unbelievable. Same thing with Apple. Like no one wanted a radio and a camera and a video camera and an album all in the same device, right? But thinking outside that box produces, more often than not, produces something amazing. And a lot of times it's very easy to overlook just how much hard and smart work goes into all of that. People usually just see the end product, but yeah, these things I believe would really set you apart in terms of building a career that you can be proud of, and building relationships with people along the way, building bridges as opposed to burning bridges, that you can look back and say, yes, I did I used the opportunities that I was given to the best of my abilities. You don't want to look back a year from now and say, oh, how I wish I did this, or how I wish I did that, or, because that's unfortunately a lot of people kind of go through that, right? It's worth it. The hard work is worth it. I know we're all doing the best we can. And hopefully there's a lot of other people like myself that went through the kind of like same stage and is all, willing to give back. I was so happy one of my mentees got an internship at my company last semester. He's probably going to come back for another semester. But he was, and this started as whenever we started the mentorship program, I was his mentor for was it the spring, and then the semester after that, he was able to get a spot, and it was good to see. It was good to see that happening, and great kid. He put in a lot of work. A lot he's learning for sure, but again, that's okay, because he's putting in the work, right? And he's asking the right questions, and he's talking to the right people, and he joined groups like this, and he ended up in the mentorship program, and I'll end by saying this: there is always something that you can take away from a situation. You can always make it work, regardless of what every other person says, right? And so, as long as you are putting in the work and doing doing the best you can, it's hard to come out not succeeding. I really believe that, and at the end of the day, I wish you all the best of luck. And again, if you have like very specific things that you wanted to know, I think we have like 30 minutes. I'm not sure, but yeah, feel free to ask. I can go on and on all day, so I think I'm just gonna nix it here. But thanks for listening.
So now we're going to open it up for Q&A, as Gabriel said. Please feel free to unmute yourself. As I said, this is more casual than our usual virtual events. We have a smaller crowd, so if anybody would like to get us started. I also have a couple questions on deck for us. If you'd like me to start. Tell you what, I'll start us. So Gabriel, you were talking about emotional intelligence, and that's very important. Can you explain further about the development of emotional intelligence versus being a student and being in your career now, and like what you would recommend students do as far as putting in that work to develop that skill?
Sure, great question. Yeah, that's something that it never used to be part of what people talked about, but transitioning from being a student to working in a workplace or like starting your career, or I guess leaving the, out of school is such a monumental shift that a lot of people are not ready for. Uh, it, it certainly was a steep learning curve for me, uh, but that transition usually comes with a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of things that just students are just not used to, right? Um, and more often than not, there's not a lot of people that can offer very candid advice, right? Or can take the time to kind of lead them through that. But generally, being emotional intelligent, especially in the workplace, goes across a whole lot of different softer skills. And for someone trying to develop that, it's something that does get better over time. You can start doing things like, when you're working with, I'll give a very specific example, right? You're working with someone who, say, thinks differently than you, right? You think, oh, I can do this on Excel. He says, no, I want it on paper. Or, you might be in a situation where you're working with someone who's just, some people are a little bit more difficult to deal with. It will not be productive if your reaction to that is say getting super upset or throwing a tantrum and all that stuff. But people do simple things like stopping, looking at something from a different perspective, or choosing not to react at the moment. And it takes practice. But little things like that, being aware, being self-aware. A lot of people are very reactive. Something happens and they just react. They don't stop to think. It's almost like it's almost like automatic. But it takes practice and developing that skill of sometimes stopping yourself from being reactive, but being proactive. So there are other things. Some people that are maybe that have a propensity to do that a lot. I've seen some that it's very cliche, count 1 to 10 or just breathe. But I guess because it's so cliche, people forget that it can help out a lot. Because at the end of the day, people get really frustrated with where they work or what they do, and then they lash out. They are also not self-aware. They don't connect with themselves enough to be self-aware to recognize that sometimes you could just have a biased opinion, right? It's very possible, especially when maybe you close yourself off to new ideas, right? And then what happens is you start becoming not very approachable, right? You start getting tagged as the one that doesn't want to work with others, those types of things. So in summary, what you can start doing right now is start to recognize those attributes or triggers, if you will, because we're all different, right? And start looking at strategies like counting from 1 to 10, or just breathing, or just looking at things more with a more open mind, or with a little bit more flexibility, and understanding different perspectives and educating yourself, because a lot of times it's just because you just don't know enough, right? And it's working through those things sets you up so much better for whenever you. And this is a great opportunity, because as a student, you are working with a lot of people just in school with projects and all that kind of stuff. So great place to practice all these skills because they do end up becoming very useful crossing over to the workforce.
We had a question in our chat. It says, how would you describe your undergrad experience when you talk about intention versus coincidence? And what they mean by that is, how do they go about these difficult classes with intention or interest when they feel that they're just trying to get it over with?
What's the last part?
How could they be intentional with their classes and show interest when they're just trying to get through it?
Okay, that's a great question. Let me stop this. Okay, so that is a really good question. A lot of times, yes, you are just grappling to get through it, right? And there's a million other things going on. I used to get frustrated because Roy, he's on the call, would give homework almost every week. Drove me insane. Yeah, I know what that feels like, been there. But I will say, so what gets you through it, you know, from my experience anyway, is that deeper conviction as to what you really want to do, right? If you're somewhat maybe undecided, like, why am I even taking this class? Why is this even important? You know, why should I care? Then of course you're gonna feel like, oh, I'm just, you know, trying to get through this. I'm just, you know, I don't have time for this. You know, I want to do something else, right? But I recognized how that class was important for what I was gunning for. So it stopped being a chore and started being more like something I needed to do for myself to grow, right? And sometimes it just needs a little time management, right? You got to prioritize, right? And sometimes you need to get help if you need help, right? I'm not saying you have to have it all figured out. No, by no means are you going to have it all figured out, right? But if you feel like you're just trying to get by, I think, and you know, this can be very practical. I think you should stop, take a break if you need to, and connect with something deeper, something more meaningful to you. And when you do that, whatever it is you do, those classes become a priority. And when they become a priority, you don't struggle mentally as much. Even if you're running into problems with, you know, I would do this all the time. I would go to his office like, I did this and this and this is not working. Can you help me out? You know, and he does, right? And I can say the same for some other professors at UAB who do the same, right? So it's not like, even if you're struggling with a homework, for instance, doesn't mean you can't get help from, you know, people that can teach you or show you like better ways of doing. Remember, smart and hard work and smart work, right? There will be no point sitting in your room and grinding for hours and hours alone by yourself when you could always just get help, you know. Again, if it is important to you, right? So I would say rearrange those priorities, find out what really means something to you, because, you know, who knows, you could just be in the wrong path. And when you get that straight, I think things will start to fall more in line. And everything I said right now, I'm trying not to lose the question. Everything I said right now speaks to being intentional, right? You're not taking the class just because you're taking the class. You're taking it for a reason, right? You're staying consistent. And this is why the presentation just had like all those words, because they're all kind of like interconnected. You got to stay consistent with why you're taking these classes and why you got to do this and why you got to do that, right? And you got to, you know, work hard and smart. And sometimes I look back at the PowerPoint page where I had all those things that I did. I look back and I'm like, how in the world did I get all this done while working and going to school and, you know, still coming out with a 3.85 GPA? How did you even do this, right? But then when I think back, you know, it looks impossible on paper, but when I think back, I don't think I would have made it through that if I wasn't determined that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer that knew what he was doing and could make a difference, that could, you know, build a competency at, you know, a company somewhere or at UAB or wherever. So that was my truth, right? That was what I connected to. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but you have to find what that is for you, right? And then go for that.
Well said. So the next question in our chat says, I'm currently doing my master's in mechanical engineering. I would say I need to connect more to people, preferably in my field, but also in general. Still in my first semester, but hoping to get an internship. What advice would you give in regards to this? I'm international, by the way.
Okay. Newsflash, I was international. Well, I am still international. So yeah, it is, for those that don't know, it is a little bit more difficult for internationals for reasons I may not get into right now, but I wouldn't necessarily rule any options out, right? I like that you talked about connecting with people. That goes a long way. I talked about how referrals work so much better than just applying randomly online. Everybody knows this, right? So connecting with people, I think, especially for an international, is probably one of the best things you can do, right? UAB does, and the School of Engineering does, you know, career fairs almost all the time. They have an office, literally an office, dedicated to career development. You know, so you can get plugged in there. You can talk to, you know, alumni, right? So now, like, hopefully we can have a healthy alumni group that we can always reach out to. So, you know, hopefully there's one more in line with mechanical or chemical.
Mechanical is what they said.
Yeah, mechanical. Yeah, I am a mechanical engineer, right? So like I can give that support. But I would say sometimes it's a little difficult. I don't know how long you've been around, but sometimes, you know, there is this cultural. Sometimes people go through culture shock and they don't want to like put themselves out there or talk to people. They kind of like stay in their safe zone. And I understand sometimes that can be a challenge, but it would do you a disservice if you didn't try. And there's certainly a lot of people, especially if it's very obvious that you are putting in the work, you are technically sound, you know, you're doing the best you can with the opportunities that you are given. That's something people see, and whenever you do that part and you put yourself out there, people are pleasantly surprised that even with the restrictions that you were able to achieve this, right? And then they are willing to give you that opportunity. I speak from experience because I came from Nigeria 4 years ago, you know, very limited to what types of scholarships I could get, very limited to what types of jobs I could get, very limited for a lot of things. I could talk about it all day. But I didn't let that become, you know, what put me down. I took the opportunities that I was given, and some of them were gracious opportunities. I mean, I got multiple scholarships, got the Dean Scholarship. So there was support coming from UAB, you know, and those things kind of helped me through. But again, it was on the backdrop of me putting in that work and people seeing that, oh, this, I wanna support you, right? Because you put in the work. Because when you don't do that, it makes it harder, right? It makes it harder for people to kind of stick out their neck to, if y'all notice, I'm being as direct. I don't think I've been in a this is very casual. I'm keeping it that way because I'm being very, very, this is the way it is, you do got to put in the work. And I know it's hard, but there are people out there that will support you 100%. I'm one of them. Dadine is one of them. Christina is one of them. Roy is one of them. Ms. Deslin's not here, but she's one of them. So just keep that in mind.
I had another question for you. What was the biggest challenge for you going from being a student to being in the professional field?
Ooh, I would say it was I think the one that stands out is dealing with, because I went from working at a general contracting company at Innovation Depot to Hubble Power Systems, which is a huge $5 billion corporation. So it went up pretty steeply. And then getting into that environment, like a corporate American environment, there was a lot of, and that's where the emotional intelligence kicks in, because you start, getting into, I guess, workplace politics or like corporate politics or all that type of relationships that you have with people. And that's why a lot of times people say the hard thing is not the work, is the people you work with, right? Because if keywords, if you don't have that emotional intelligence to maneuver those things, what ends up happening is you get stressed, you hate your job, you hate the people, you go home miserable, you can't get, you don't get promoted, or, a whole lot of things, right? So definitely the most difficult thing for me, I think, was navigating that corporate political arena, getting to understand how different departments work with other departments, learning how to work smarter, as opposed to, I guess, personally, I do like to keep things kind of, straight. I'm not very political in that sense, but a lot of other people might be. But then you cannot lash out, right? You cannot handle that with, you got to handle it with grace, if I would say, right? And when you don't do that, even though you might be really good at your job, overall, it starts to affect you in one way or another. So if anything, all those little jobs I did and working with all those different types of people all fed up to helping me navigate the corporate environment that I find myself in today. Helps me navigate even right now, talking to you on this. It's all connected, right? It's all connected. I only know a few of you here. Most of you I don't know. But I'm talking to you like probably, I've known you forever, which, that's just not the case, right? But like, it's all interconnected. It takes, it's been a development, right? I didn't wake up being, this right now. So that was difficult for me, but I've been there about 2 years. I mean, I've been working for almost 6, 7 with everything put together. So I'm definitely in a much better place. But the sooner you start to learn those skills, the easier it becomes for you whenever you find yourself in that type of a situation.
That was great advice. Great advice. Any other questions from anyone? got a few minutes left. I do want to highlight some things that Gabriel said for our students to know, and our alumni as well who are joining us, and staff too, so that you can help our students with this. Gabriel mentioned, our career services dean, Deslin and Molly Kate, do a phenomenal job of connecting our students through the career fairs. They started the mentorship program, which Gabriel's part of, and we'll have that again this fall. So if you haven't looked into that, you should definitely look into that. If you have questions about that, you don't want to ask tonight, you have my contact information. I'll drop my email in the chat. I'm also going to put a link in the chat for you to update your contact information, because we want to keep everyone informed of what's happening at the School of Engineering. The only way we can do that is by having the most up-to-date contact information. So I am going to do that. How do you seek a mentor? Well, glad you asked. That's through our mentorship program, but also Gabriel, if you want to speak to that too, of not just participating in our mentorship program, but as far as seeking out mentors when you get into the working world. And while you're doing that, I'm going to drop these links in the chat.
So yeah, great question. There's a young alumni mentorship program happening right now. Essentially, there's a pool of young alumni that graduated, I think, in the last 5 years or so, and people, like students that want to be mentored. They look at their profiles and they pick out who they prefer. Say maybe because it maybe closely matches what they're studying or something like that. And it's pretty easy. You send an email or a text, and you get matched with a mentor, and then he or she would guide you through the semester. It's and possibly beyond. Yeah, there's no cap, right? Officially, it might end at the end of the semester, but I mean, I still talk with my own mentee from like 2 semesters ago, right? So it's more about forming those relationships. So yeah, there's a form that you can fill out, and maybe Christina can paste that link as well. Just fill that out. I think I don't know if they're still matching for this semester, but certainly for the fall they will be doing that. So fill that out, and you get matched with someone, and they can help you out for sure.
Yeah, so I've put that information in the chat. I don't have the form link, but we can get that for you, and I can connect you with Deslin and Molly Kate. They will be your go-tos for that, and would definitely be willing to work with our students. They're constantly sending emails. They've got a new newsletter that's going out. So there's so many opportunities at the School of Engineering, and also for our alumni. If you want to be a mentor, let us know. We would love to get you connected that way. So please email me. It's in the chat. It's cnroach@uab.edu. And we'll get you connected with Deslin and Molly Kate. They're the ones who head up that program. It's been phenomenal. Our students have raved about it. Our mentors have raved to us about it. And this is the way to get our students out in the working world and develop our alumni, and just bring more acclaim to UAB. So does anyone have any more questions? Gabriel or myself? If not, then thank you all for joining. We will be sending out the recording for this. We'll get the editing done so it's a little cleaner, more polished, but we will be sending that out, and I'll be sure to include any information in regards to the mentorship program, contacts for Deslin and Molly Kate. And if you have any other questions for myself, again, my email is in the chat. And for our alumni, please use the link that I put in the chat, update your contact information. Even if you think we have it, just go ahead and do it, just so we have the most up-to-date information and can keep you informed of all our events that are upcoming. The next virtual event part of this series is going to be on July 7th. Again, that's July 7th. It'll be at 6 p.m. as well. And we are going to have Xander Thomas and Brody De Silva speaking about their experience. If there are no other questions, I will tell everyone good night. Thank you so much, Gabriel. We really appreciate you. Thank you for such a great presentation. And good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.